Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We have Joe Yurden with us, and we're going to start with our pre-show. We're going to talk about some chicken wings there, Joe, because we saw you tweet out. Now, I've never gone to Elmo's Bar, so you're going to have to give me a level of, is that above our secret place that we go to?
Just give the name out, Mike.
Gabriel's Gate, okay?
It ain't that secret.
It's not
anymore. No.
Thanks, Russ. You made me spill. But how
You're
is
going to get hounded for autographs? So it's fine. It's fine.
Is it superior to Duff's? Is it superior to Gabriel's Gate, or is it around the same quality?
I would put Elmo pretty high up there. It's pretty elite stuff, and they do a double dip thing for their wing sauces that other places don't do. So that alone puts it on a different level for me. Because if you're feeling, because what is it? I think it's like there's a handful of guys like Chris Baker. Those guys, they love getting I think it's like the Cajun honey mustard double dip. And I'm not a big mustard guy,
yeah,
so
it's
a hit for me. But like a Cajun hot wing,
yeah, that's that. I used the picture that you showed. I was like, I'm there because Cajun and hot. That's good. Now I have to say, I'll give them credit because I've always been an aficionado of, in terms of like the takeout wing, not going someplace. I've always liked Lenova's barbecue wings. They have a lot of failings in other areas, but their barbecue wings are fantastic.
Yeah, the Lenova that's right over here on like the west side, the original Lenova place.
Yes.
Where it's like the barbecue char pit barbecue wing.
Yes.
That's an all-time goodie. It doesn't get the credit because it's not it's not the medium or the hot or the buffalo sauce on it.
Right.
But like as far as a barbecue wing goes, man, that's really up there. So it's the same at Amherst Alehouse as well.
Yes.
Their char pit barbecue. Crown Royal char pit barbecue wing is out of this world, and it's good thing we're doing this at lunchtime because I'm going to be starving.
But the only problem
there are other cities than Buffalo, Mike, that we'd all like to.
No, I was just going to say this, and then I know you had yours, Russ. I was just going to say you have to take out a second mortgage to get a bucket of Lenova barbecue wings. It's like the at Super Bowl time, the sheet and 50 wings is like $80. I love them, but I just can't afford it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Russ.
So by me now, there's a new place called the Wing Kitchen, and the chef who made that place was on Chopped. He also is a teacher at like Camden County College, and it's really good. What the difference is for them is, I kind of peeked in the kitchen. They have the flash fryers, so you know how like Buffalo likes them extra greasy. This makes them a little bit drier, but they season them ahead of time and afterwards in the sauce, and so they're doing it all by hand. And you really can taste the difference. Like it's better than any place around here. And I would put them up against like a Duff's or somebody like that. I don't know if I'd put them up against Gabriel's Gate, but I might because it's different and it's really good. Like the seasoning on it is perfect.
How far into Chops did the chef go?
I remember the guy. I want to say he got to the second round, lost in the second round.
You got the crap beat out of him by Bobby Flay.
Listen, it's tough. Like you go on Chopped, and I feel like if you got out of the first round, you're a winner because just getting out of the first round, not knowing what's going to be there, where everything is, the timing, you're a winner in my book.
Now, for me in Philadelphia, this place called and this show actually appeared on Guy Fieri's show, Divers. Memphis, the Memphis Tap Room, which is from where I work. Their wings are just phenomenal, and they're just right. They're not too hot, but they are just right. And I think they use some sort of a beer sauce, a beer element to it as well, to soak in and brine the meat as well. It's anytime I'm over there, it's like an Allagash white and the wings are first. That's what comes in. They're actually kind of known for, when they were on that show, on Fieri's show, they're known for the beer battered pickle bills. So dill pickles, which are good, but really their wings are really what I think are the star of the show.
You know, the one thing I forgot to mention too, and then I'll let Jen go. On, like, if you order the wing box that you get from this place, they give you a homemade buttermilk donut, and it's amazing.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Joe ain't gonna make it to the end of the show at this
I forgot to mention that. That's like the kicker, man. You get that.
Jan gotta make it. That's bad stuff.
Jan, do you have a favorite one?
No, I mean, my kids are much more wing people than I am.
Not even Zorns? You just throw in Zorns?
I mean, I can't eat it. I won't eat it Zorns.
What do you mean you won't eat it Zorns? Oh, I know.
Really? I mean,
Jim, you know what? I believe a lot of people have broken their ways to eat it.
I'm sure there have. I am not, however, one of those that fall into that bucket. So
there's another local place, and I haven't been there in a few years, so I don't know whether they're still open. But it's a sort of like a corner bar type of place in Depew named Sal's, and they used to do their wings. They like you were saying, Anthony. They would soak them in like a jalapeno pepper brine, and then they would bread them and deep fry them. And their just hot sauce was so hot that it would basically curl your nose hair. It was
it's too hot for me.
Yeah, I pick the day that I didn't have anything
to eat. Eating at that point. That's stun eating.
Yeah, we had to pick the day I didn't have anything to eat all day to talk about this stuff right now before we
I'm sorry.
Well, go get something to eat.
Yeah. The middle square.
Joe's already going to be eating on the camera anyway, so you might as well just join him. So
listen, I'm sure X got food squirreled away.
Everyone knows I have no problem eating on camera, but
you probably got an emergency chocolate bar down there somewhere. I'm sure you do.
I don't think that, I actually don't. Normally we have there's always like a. My family's funny. There's always a box of Oreos hidden somewhere in this house, but you don't know where it is. Type thing.
A good segue, Russ, because we're going to talk also about the NHL coming to an agreement with Nestle, having the Kit Kat bar as the official NHL bar. Okay, I'm sorry. The official candy bar in Canada has to be a coffee crisp. How dare you?
No,
yes.
I disagree. No,
Yes.
I'll tell you what. I like the Kit Kat, and certainly in Canada it's a little better because the chocolate's a little better because they use cane sugar. But the Aero bar is superior to the Kit Kat, and I don't know why.
Sorry. Mint Kit Kats are awesome. The white Kit Kats are awesome.
Have you had an Aero bar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mint Kit Kats are awesome.
My favorite candies,
the European ones are even better because
the only time we ever have candy here is right after Halloween when the kids have been out doing stuff like that.
That's the only time, really?
No, really, we don't. That's funny.
Wow.
My wife comes from a family of dentists, so it's like they're really.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The go-to is the Thin Mints in the freezer with a glass of milk.
Yeah, like I say, we do have Oreos.
Joe,
I'm definitely impartial to Three Musketeers bars, and
they're decent.
And Almond Joys.
The Almond Joy is weird.
I only see them at Halloween. I'll eat it, but it's usually around Halloween.
Joe, little Almond Joy things, I'm not going to stop eating them until they're out.
Over the last few months, Joe, since we can't get into Canada, I've had to search out places that carry coffee crisps in Buffalo, and there are very few, like Premier Gourmet and a couple gas stations on Delaware Avenue do, but you cannot get a coffee crisp outside of Canada, and that kills me because that's my favorite.
Oh no, stop by Wegmans. They've got them. They're hidden away in Wegmans.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Mike's out of here.
I have a real love-hate relationship.
I'll tell you one thing that I do like about Canada. Here we have like the Mounds bar, which I like, but dark chocolate's not necessarily my favorite. If you go and you stop at duty free before you go into Canada or on the way back, they have Bounties, which are milk chocolate and the coconut. Oh, those are great, man.
Yeah, and by the way, just to let you know, a Mars bar in Canada is called a Milky Way because a Mars bar does not have the almonds. It used to be a Mars bar in the U.S. and they had almonds, but the Mars bar in Canada is a Milky Way. That's all it is. They don't have Milky Ways in Canada.
Right.
There you go.
I've never seen a Milky Way in Canada. Anyway,
let's get going here at the show.
Except for candy talk.
Before we keep eating. All right, let me get the date right, guys. All right, Thursday, July 30th.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just introduce Joe at the end.
Yep.
Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, July 30th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello, and pass me the insulin.
I'm Jan Levine, and that questioning the year lets you know exactly just what this year has been like.
I'm Anthony Mangione, really having a desire for wings now. Thanks, guys.
I know.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I could just walk around the corner and get them. I'm good.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is a podcast. It comes to you every Monday through Friday. During the playoffs, of course, we're always wearing a different jersey. And today I'm going with the new vintage Oilers, Kings jersey, obviously. But it is my Gretzky jersey. So,
see.
But I got
one of those.
I knew the reason I hated it.
Actually, there's a backstory. So so when Gretzky got traded, obviously everybody knows about Cosby's in New York. That was right when they were changing the color sequencing from the yellow and gold to the black and the silver, right?
Yeah.
In the window of Cosby's, right after the trade, they had a yellow and purple Kings jersey. That was awesome, and I haven't seen it ever since. But it was right after the trade, before they announced the color scheme changed. They already had it in the window of Cosby's.
That is so cool. Cosby's is such a great name too. I remember that place.
Yeah, it was. Now it's off the beaten path. People forget about it.
Like on 31st Street between 7th and 8th in Manhattan. It's not even right near the Garden anymore.
No, it's not even close.
I think that's the one that advertised in the back of the Hockey News.
Yep.
Yeah,
always.
Yeah, there was one up. There was one up in
Modell's did.
Doesn't there a Cosby's up near Niagara too? Like in that Buffalo area, I think there was one.
It wasn't that.
No.
There was a Canadian distributor in the Hockey News but I can't remember the name. It was based in Toronto. I used to go there.
I mean, I liked the Kings New jerseys. I thought they were cool when they first came out with Gretzky. But I was when I was a kid, one of my actual first jersey I ever owned at all was a yellow version of this, the yellow Kings jersey. And it was just a friend of my dad. My dad was in the Air Force, and he flew somebody who was related to somebody on the Kings. So I had like a Kings number 17 jersey. I have no idea whose it was. It didn't have a
It's
name.
Juha Viting.
I had no idea who it was. It was like early on. No idea who it was. No nameplate or anything like that. But it was. So that was when I played goalie as a kid, as a really little kid. That was the jersey I wore all the time. So I love I think the Kings, like that. I think the crown logo is phenomenal. Like just like there's no getting around that.
Yeah, Imperial Margarine had the same one.
Yeah, there you go. So and I love when they
remember those
back,
commercials, by the way.
Don't mess with Mother Nature.
I mean, I love when they brought back the purple ones, because the purple ones were these are really cool. I don't know if Gretzky ever actually wore this one.
I don't think so. I never saw
it. If you look at there's one of the third jerseys, which is the really ugly third one they had, the white with the purple on it. That one,
right? Yeah, right. With the giant king or whatever it was.
It looked like Thor's beer. I don't know.
Burger King.
Crown.
It was very
the Burger King. The Burger King.
That like 2-year period where every graphic art looked like that, like like that
mid to late 90s. Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's get edgy, guys. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get on to let's get on to yesterday, and a lot of stuff happened, and we could do this. I thought in the same way I kind of did yesterday, and talk about the games as we go. Where I asked every team going into this thing, since we haven't played for 5 months, just filling Joe in because I'm sure Joe doesn't watch every show. What we talked about every team that going in, and we've had a whole off season here. So going into a new season, there's always question marks. So my concept was, let's see what question marks we can answer about these teams, if given these like brief post-season pre-playoff games, and then see where we are. So let's start with we talked about the Florida Panthers yesterday already. So I'm not going to get into that because we were talking about that they were playing as we were on the air, and we talked about the obvious one is Bobrovsky going to be okay. That's the big no question asked question mark. Let's talk about Tampa for a second, though. And my question mark for Tampa is: can Tampa recover from last year's playoff demise? Are they okay? That's my are they going to be do they have to win the first game? If they say let's say Tampa was somehow to lose their first game or first 2 games of the playoff series in the first round, is this team tough enough to recover from what happened last year? And let's start with Joe because he's our guest today. So what do you think, Joe?
Well, I think just in general with how this whole restart and everything is going to go, it's fascinating to think that this is connected to the season that was on months ago. We're trying to base everything off of how that ended, and there's just been so much time in between that that trying to use what we knew from then to apply it to now seems really tough.
It's like predicting a new season using the season before, we do every year. We try to put teams into their positions.
But it's so strange just because we're just jumping right in, in the fire basically. And I think in Tampa's case, I don't know. I think having a long layoff is pretty good for them. I mean, it it's unfortunate, that Stamkos, was getting banged up, and something's up with Hedman, because I didn't see him in the lineup the last.
It's a personal thing. He'll be fine. Apparently, it's some family issue that he'll be there for.
Okay, but I mean, that's a team. I think if they lose that first game, I think, and it's probably honestly, it's the best form that they're in. This this round robin thing to start off, because
yes,
that can alleviate a lot of issues, because if they get banged around in that, okay, they get knocked down the ladder a little bit, but I don't think it affects them too much. But if they were thrown right into the fire and they had to win games, like win or die, win or go home right away, I think that gets a little daring, because it's it is a best of 5. You lose that first game, suddenly you're up against it right away.
Yeah,
that's not great. So, but I think in their case, when they, you got to deal with Philly, and you got to deal with Washington, you got to deal with Boston. You know what? If you're going to lose some games to start it off, might as well be against the best.
Yeah, right. So I think
bumps that way and just kind of skirt away from it and get it figured out after that.
Yeah, I mean, watching them yesterday, there's no question how good they are still. I mean, and they did that without Stamkos and without Hedman. And Florida, granted, didn't play well at all, but they are really good, right? So, does anybody have any concerns that they could actually that Tampa could actually crumble again in the playoff situation? Say somehow they get Columbus or win.
No, matter of fact, I saw McDonough sort of loosely laughing in the third period and having a good time, and that's something where a year ago they weren't doing. And he's a guy that just loves playing hockey, right? So if he gets that feeling in him, then that means the pressure is not turned up that much yet, and that's good. So I felt like they might be over the hurdle for that.
And let me throw this out there too, as a general term here, because I think the idea of playing without fans changes the perception of teams choking to a degree. I mean, I wonder how much less pressure that throws on them. Because if they're, say the first 2 games are in Tampa and they're playing Columbus, okay, for whatever reason, like Columbus get, that pressure won't exist if they're not playing without fans.
I think there's still the mental pressure there, but you sort of stole my line track. If they go into the first round of the playoffs and they play Columbus and they lose game 1, then it's bad memories all over again. I think they're mentally strong enough and a good enough team that if their top players are not injured, that even if they lose a game 1, that they could bounce back. I mean, they're really deep, and I know that Brian Burke on the Hockey Central show was talking about the fact that they added Goudreau, they added Blake Coleman, they added, even though I'm a critic of Zach Bogosian, having Zach Bogosian as a 6 or a 7 is a nice luxury to have going into the playoffs. So they're pretty deep and they're pretty talented.
I'll give you the contrary, right? So I think if they lose game 1, regardless of fans being there, the media through Zoom is still going to ask them all the questions as to whether or not they feel the pressure and whether or not they're going to have a repeat of the year before. And as you said, psychologically, yes, they brought in other guys, which will help. So none of them went through that situation last year, but you have enough guys who are in the room who went through it. And if you lose game 1, I still think some of those psychological doubts have to come up, whether or not they're strong enough to get through it. I know it's a lousy answer, but it kind of depends. I don't think we're going to know that until it actually happens. I could see it going either way, but I don't think the lack of fans provides them any level of air comfort, because the media is still going to ask the same questions, and it's going to be doubled down because now you have the history of last year as well.
Yeah, I think Anthony. I'll throw this to Anthony. Since I'm sorry with directing, since we have so many people. But for Anthony, along these lines, my last question about Tampa is Steven Stamkos ever going to be healthy enough to actually be Steven Stamkos again?
I think he is. Yeah, I think he can.
Yeah,
I think so. I think he's got all the you can't predict injuries, but I do think that he does have the taste of that from last year, and he doesn't. That's something they don't want to repeat. And it's a weird dynamic for Tampa, because again, how they were finishing off their regular season, kind of going through the motions last year because they were so far ahead of everybody else. So they lapped the field. And then you get into this very unique circumstance where it hadn't been tested for months, almost several months. And then the first bit of adversity that hits them. Now we have a different circumstance where everybody's been off.
Yes.
And everybody's kind of starting from technically ground zero, except in this circumstance, they at least have a few games to get themselves a little bit ramped up and get themselves immediately in it. Do they have the memories of last year? I'm sure that they do. Yeah. But in the end, I still think that there's a pretty good chance that in many ways, them not having the arena, I know Jan's pointing to the media asking questions, but again, being, have in front of your own fan base and you start hearing the buzz of, hey, here we go again. You don't quite have that this time with an empty arena. Right. So I'm wondering if that dynamic actually plays in Tampa's favor in this circumstance.
I think so. Okay, let's move on to the Colorado-Minnesota game, because this was, there was a really good game. First off, like we expected it would be. These are two teams that are both kind of clipping. And this was the first game that I watched that I felt like I was watching two teams that were more in mid-season form. The other games before this, I felt like there was a definite. Even in the Tampa, Tampa looked like they were in mid-season form, but Florida didn't. So the big questions on Colorado, and it's the one that's staring you right in the face. You can't avoid how good they are, but who the hell is their goalie going to be? Who is it? Grubauer? Is it Francis?
Grubauer.
Yesterday,
I don't think the first goal, maybe the second goal, he had no chance on. The goal that Stahl scored. Side of the net, hits the guy in the body, nobody there. He's got 3/4 of an empty net to get into. There's nothing Grubauer could have done to stop that. I thought he actually played a fairly decent game. And as you said, these were two teams that looked like they were in the meeting in Game 3 of a playoff series. There was a lot of hitting and a lot of anger, looked like, between the two squads that I was surprised at.
It was a good one. And, Mike, as far as goaltending goes on this one, obviously they split. They both played 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Francis was perfect. Where Grubauer gave up 2 goals. 2 goals, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the funny thing is this is a series where both teams have goaltending question marks. Yeah. Where I think that Colorado and Jared Bednar will probably go with Grubauer to start, but it could be similar to what happened to him in Washington, where he gets to start in the series, and if he doesn't live up to expectations, then they're going to go to Francouz pretty quickly. With Minnesota, Stalock was the better of the two goalies in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Dubnyk, I think most people agree, is the better goaltender. It's just a question of whether the personal things off the ice and everything else is straightened out or is not distracting him. And if that's the case, then I think they would go with Dubnyk. But I don't know what they're going to do. In that
interesting, because they we can go. We'll have Minnesota's question, because that's the same question for them too as well. But they started who they started, you would think would be interesting to see.
But he didn't look good.
He didn't look good at all, and Dubnyk looked much better.
Yeah,
which and Dubnyk is a streaky goalie by nature. I
think you got to go with Dubnyk, because at the end of the day, what's funny? Stalock finished the season strong, but technically he was still coming in relief.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? That's what he is used to, because when you saw him start that game yesterday, he started it cold, man, and that first goal was bad.
And he's a rhythm again, much like Dubnyk is a rhythm goalie, but he's got much more of a resume. Stalock, again, he was on a roll, but sometimes backup goalies get on rolls, and then the season gets pulled out from under you, and now you're coming back cold, as you said, It may be too tall of an order to ask Alex Stalock to come in and be ready. On point, the way that a Dubnyk probably would be.
Joe, these are two situations that are open to second guessing. But if I'm Bednar, or if I'm the coach for Minnesota, I go with the more established guy, and then you can always go to that option B if you get the chance.
Yeah, right. This is like a thing where if you've got any questions in goal, and there's a lot of teams that are going to have those. They're going to have those questions. But if you find out who your hot hand is right away, you're sticking with that guy.
Yeah,
and I think in Colorado's case that I think it's a little less in doubt. Francouz is probably going to be a pretty good goalie, but Grubauer they've got a ton of faith in, and I think in Minnesota's case, they were a team that was pretty down and out of it for most of the regular season, and then just had a complete wake up call once everything got changed.
Yeah.
And I think whether it's Stalock or it's Dubnyk, because they're both capable, and obviously Dubnyk's had the higher highs in his career, but you don't hesitate to break out the hook if you gotta get somebody else going if you think they're going to be the answer. This is the kind of tournament where you can't hesitate. You gotta get it figured out really quick, and I think the pressure is a little bit higher on Colorado's case because they do have do have a much better team, and they've got an MVP level player on their center. So I mean they've got a lot. There's a lot bigger things riding on this whole tournament for them. But man, I would hate to be the coach that has to go into this thing second guessing your goaltending every single day, and you've only got one exhibition game to get it figured out. When you have
two, they have the fortunate thing about Colorado is they have the basically 3 more games, so that's huge compared to Minnesota. Like they can play the two, they can play Grubauer, they can play Francis. They don't have to just depend on this one case. They have. Minnesota has nothing else they have to decide based on what they saw here and based on the regular season, which is why I think that they will still stay with Stalock.
Yeah, I think that's
the fact that you don't start Stalock in this game and then to me, that's like they made the decision that Stalock's their guy. And unless Stalock was absolutely horrible, and he wasn't horrible, and he wasn't great, but he wasn't horrible. I think not to say they won't switch to Dubnyk quickly if they have to, but all right. So the other question, I didn't have any more questions. That to me was only.
Actually, you have no more Minnesota questions.
I have one more Minnesota question, and that is, who's the difference maker on this team? Because the thing about the Wild is that they've always been a team of like kind of nondescript. They've never had a superstar. It's hurt them a lot. I've talked to people about it.
Gabrick's the close.
Never been able to.
Marian Gaborik at his height was probably the.
Yeah, right. He was, but they've never had a player that can. They thought okay, Ryan Suter and Parise, but they're. Ryan Suter is superstar character, but neither of these guys are the guys you're going to, Parise he's an understated guy to a degree with this kind of stuff. Koivu is like such a legendary guy for them, obviously. Who's the difference maker? And I know who I think it is, but
I think we all have the same view.
What was that?
I think we may all have the same view.
Yeah, why don't you start, Jan?
I'm going Kevin Fiala.
Yeah. I mean,
to my opinion, look. I know Russ is shaking his head, but to me, in terms
I love Fiala. I just don't think he's the difference maker.
Because I think speed and talent, I think he has the capacity. Has he done it yet? I think he was doing it in Nashville before he got hurt in the playoffs that year. He had really taken his game to another level. But I think in terms of what he can potentially bring to that squad, compared to what else is on that team, he is the guy that could be the difference maker in a series.
Well, yeah. I'll give the smart-ass answer. I think the difference maker for the Minnesota Wild is banned from being able to play in the playoffs this year, and that's Kirill Kaprizov. Because I think if they had him, that they would actually have a legitimate chance of winning in the playoffs. I don't think they do, but they're a team that's going to have to attack you with depth, with three lines, with all their defense playing at a high level, with Dubnyk or Stalock playing out of their mind. Because they were really good in a window of about 4 weeks after they fired Bruce Boudreau to when the league shut down. If they can continue that, then they could win. They could go deep in the playoffs. But I don't know whether you can recapture that after being off.
We talked about they were the fourth best record in the Western Conference from January on. That's not a small thing.
If you watch that game, they did recapture it. This is all of a sudden now the Minnesota Wild played almost as good as the Colorado Avalanche, and people aren't giving them credit for hanging with the Avalanche.
No. It's crazy. And the thing about them is, this: like if we were going into a new season with the Minnesota Wild, we would be like, yeah, they got us together at the end of last year.
Absolutely,
they're a team you have to look out for. They're going to be dangerous.
I'm telling you, they're going to win their series. Eric Stahl will be their star. Eric Stahl looks revived from the rest. He looked like the Eric Stahl of like 4 years ago in that game, and I think he is the difference maker. And Dumba's the other one because Dumba's healthy.
Yeah, that was going to be you.
I'm sorry.
Name the player that I think is.
I shouldn't have said it.
That's okay, Matt. No, I was going to say Matt Dumba to me. I mean, it was between Stahl and Dumba, but I really do think Dumba has really come into his own and can be a different. And I think certainly in the first round series against Vancouver, he could be a major difference maker for them.
Yeah,
I just like the way he plays. He gives you a lot at both ends of the ice. I like his offensive flair. I like his neutral zone coverage is excellent. He's able to close on opposing forwards pretty quickly and break up plays. Dumba, I think, could be a really important player for them.
Oh, I'm totally with you. Now, moving on to Carolina and Washington. Next up, watching Carolina. We always talk about Carolina, how no one knows what they really are, or who they are, or why they're so good, or why they're a playoff team. Even but they are, and they're obviously good. They're obviously good enough to be a playoff team, and they have speed. And they've got talent, but who are these guys? It really is kind of baffling. And this. game was the first time watching Carolina in some time that I felt like, yeah, they're pretty damn deep. Like they have a lot that, you can see the trade deadline moves they made has made them a lot better, depth wise. And there's no like weak spot. And I mean, now if they can get Trocheck to play like he played in this game, that's but Trocheck can disappear for weeks on end. And that is my big question for the Carolina Hurricanes. Is Trocheck the Trocheck that was really good, or the Trocheck that's not really good?
Well, Russ yesterday talked about the difference in terms of up the middle with Stroman, Zibanejad with the Rangers, and the top two with Carolina, and then Trocheck being the number 3.
Yeah,
I'm less concerned about that matchup when it comes to Carolina than I am. They're so deep on defense. They have a lot of talent up front. And every time I look at that team, I think if they had an above average goaltender, they would be, a no doubt for the Eastern Conference final. But I look at what Mrazek did yesterday, and he looked like Arturs Urbe at age 50. He's just an average at best goalie.
He is like that. The two things I saw out of Carolina, though, that were encouraging, Mrazek aside, and it's not like they gave up 5 goals, so I don't want to I don't want to totally bury them. I saw Svechnikov playing physical.
Yeah.
If he plays physical and scores, he is going to be a force in the playoffs because he is probably 25% stronger than he was when he first got to the league. And then Teravainen is quietly maybe their best fire starter, best assist guy. I know everybody wants to give Aho all this credit. Teravainen has turned into like a star player in this league. And he just looks completely comfortable with setting up big plays.
Yeah. Plus, he does everything for him, right? He's on his time on ice is like he's spent time on the power play. He was in nearly 2 minutes penalty killing.
He reminds me at this point now, Teravainen. He's getting to the point where he looks like he looks like a finished Claude Giroux in the absolute prime of Giroux's career.
Yeah,
it's similar physical build, just the kind who could blow up. Just he's a guy you have to account for at all times of the ice. And does everything, I think, for Carolina in this circumstance. It's just I love Carol. I really, the more and more I look at Carolina, as long as to Mike's point, if they get good goaltending, competent goaltending in this series, they should win against New York.
And how about Justin Williams in that game? Here's a guy who I saw on the beaches in Ventnor, not too long ago, down here, and I can't believe he's out there and he's just playing like he looked like he had taken like a serious shot of youth, like he was, and we know he's just a guy who gets up for big games, but he looks like he's primed to make a serious run.
Joe, there's balance in terms of veteran and youth, in terms of skill and in terms of work, guys who work. They're deep on defense, even without Dougie Hamilton. But I keep coming back to the goaltending situation with Carolina. That's the chink in their armor.
Well, I look at what I'm going back to what X said though. Like their depth to me is one where if the depth shows up, boy, they're dangerous. Because I see Niederreiter. He's fabulous when he's on, but you don't really notice him at all if he's not involved.
Exactly.
And it's the same for guys like Dzingel. Dzingel, he's a guy where if it's cliche and it's obvious to say it, but if the shots are going in, he's playing great. But if not, he doesn't really get totally involved in the games, and that to me is a big issue with them. Where if you can get behind that, beyond that line of the Finns and Svechnikov and those guys aren't really bringing it. It's tough to see them really keeping up with everybody else depth wise. But goaltending. And Mrazek's the same story though. If he's hot, man, get out of the way. He's gonna roll. Yeah. But if he's off, he's way off. That's a huge problem. The only thing you don't have to question with them is their defense. Their defense is great.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
I see them going with Trocheck on their second line, moving Stahl down to the third line. I do think Warren Fogle is going to get some movement. I think he moves up from their bottom six, maybe even to the second line. Nekash didn't play yesterday, so it's another guy who they can add in. Look, I've written enough about this. I've said repeatedly, take the 4-0 mark that the Rangers had against them this year and completely throw it in the garbage because they're two completely different teams.
Yeah, they are.
You said when we started the call, it's almost like a whole new season, right? You have to start, in essence, from scratch. For them, for Carolina, getting a game from Sami Vatanen is huge because he doesn't just have to go right to the playoffs, right? He's able to get his sea legs a little bit underneath him and get used to playing in the system as opposed to just in an intra-squad game. So they are going to be a formidable out. Especially, look, I mean, I love Aho, but Teravainen's been my favorite player on that team for several years now. They stole him from Chicago because Chicago had the cap lows. And as I said, he to me is probably the most dangerous guy on that team, just given what he does all over the ice.
I mean, you called it with Jordan Staal moving him down. I think I was going to say the same thing. I think that if Trocheck is going to show up like he did yesterday, he gets up to the second line, and then Staal gets to be basically the Rod Brindamore of the Carolina Hurricanes,
or the Jordan Staal of the Penguins era, where they just call it matchup problems.
Right. It's so interesting to me how much Jordan Staal reminds me of Rod Brindamore, and Brindamore being the coach. It's just like the guy who's like, he can score, but he's really great defensively.
But he's not much of a scorer. That's where everything.
He's not a great scorer, but
he had the 1 year. He had the 1 year where he scored a lot in Pittsburgh, but really, he's not that guy. He's the guy you see now, who is actually better defensively, who does chip in offensively, but he's a great leader in the locker room. But he's never been that scorer. He never was going to be.
You can put Stahl on the same line is what I think is going to happen, and they're going to keep them together. The question is it going to be Niederreiter who lines up opposite them against, or Warren Foegele?
Niederreiter looked good, actually. They both did.
The thing that impressed me the most about Aho in that game is his hitting. Like, you don't think of Aho as like Aho is throwing his body around for this. He's not a big guy, but he's just like, he's leading by example out there.
You're also going up against Washington as well.
Right.
If you don't let them know that you're out there physically, they will take it to you.
Yeah. Totally. Otherwise, Rocket Richard Trophy winner Tom Wilson will come and try to, decapitate.
Actually, Wilson almost had a goal in that game. That's the funny thing.
Unleash the beast that is Tom Wilson.
Had the nicest goal of that game in terms of that tic-tac-toe play. But it's amazing how Ovi still finds a way to get open at the left dot and nobody stops him.
But and my other question is,
else, if you have a move and it's good, it's good.
Yeah, but again, at a certain point in time, you kind of know he's going to be there.
But it doesn't matter.
He's in his office, and that's Ovi's spot.
Right. Are you have a 100-mile-an-hour slapper? If you're not, he's like, there's only so many things you could do about it.
Yeah. All right. Two questions. My other question was Mrazek. We already kind of touched on that. So let's move on to Washington. Can Alex Ovechkin be Alex Ovechkin without fans in the stadium? Like, in other words, I'm going to throw this out there, it's obviously was great yesterday. There's a lot of energy going on, but there's a thing about Ovechkin that I think Ovechkin feeds off of crowds and fans probably as much as any player in the league.
I think he'll be perfectly fine. He can generate his own motivation. That's not even a concern.
I will trump that act because I think there's always something to where games are being played, and Joe knows this because he's covered the Leafs as well as I. Alex Ovechkin always dines out at Scotiabank Arena. He kills the Leafs. He will kill people in that building. He loves it.
He loves the spotlight, and Toronto's a spotlight city.
Right, and there's no bigger spotlight than this playoffs in Toronto, in that building. He doesn't need the fans. He will dine out in this playoffs.
And you know what? The best part about Ovechkin, and I say this as a full compliment, I think of him as Stifler from American Pie in the lacrosse scenes where he's just the ultimate teammate, pump everybody up, score goals, show off, just do everything humanly possible, and his teammates love him for it. I think if there's nobody in the building, if there's 100,000 people in the building, he's going to play the same exact style of hockey.
Yeah, interesting. All right, I like it. Okay, I mean, I'm the only one who thought that was possible. My next question. Will Ilya Kovalchuk get in the way? In other words, this is a team that has they haven't played much with Kovalchuk. I think there's pressure to play him more than they should.
Go to Russ on this one first.
I was watching him. I didn't see much.
No, I didn't see much either, but they play him a lot.
Actually, you want to be really honest? He looked tired at times.
He did, but they play him a lot. That's the point. That's what I'm trying to say. Like,
you're trying to justify it. That is the worry. That is the worry about Kovalchuk. But you know what? I think Reardon looked different to me this time. Like, I think he realized his job was on the line, and I think if Kovalchuk doesn't play good, I don't think he'll hesitate in moving him down.
I mean, he was on every power play. He played 14 minutes, and his only stat on his whole stat sheet is a bunch of zeros, 0, 0, 0. He had 2 shots on goal. He had 1 hit and then 2 giveaways.
Yeah, he looked like I did. Like
the giveaways, right? They let the Caps in giveaways, and it's like that. I mean, that's the only 2, but still, I worry that the thing about Kovalchuk and Ovechkin together is I was hoping that would motivate Kovalchuk to be like, to beat. You know what I mean? To like, because there's a really Russian.
I think there's something.
Compete against each other. They love competing to be the top guy.
There's something to that, but again, this is also well past prime era Ilya Kovalchuk that we're and in many ways, I don't want to say at the deadline. This felt like when that trade happened that he was playing well with Montreal. He was playing well with relatively well with Montreal, but I did have that sort of feeling of, hey, hitch a ride on my back. You finally get that cup you're missing.
He's playing well in Montreal because there was no.
And if you could fit, can you fit it? And fitting in that role, and whether or not potentially that Montreal style fit the way Kovalchuk was playing. We'll have to see whether or not it's going to work here in Washington. But if they think his play is not up to snuff, they cannot. Reardon can't afford to have him playing too high in the lineup or giving him too many minutes.
His last playoff goal was in 2012.
What was his last playoff game though?
He's a guy who's played a remarkable few amount of playoff games in his career. It's pretty astonishing that way.
That happens when you're drafted by the Thrashers.
Joe, thoughts on Kovalchuk?
The thing that gets me though is you think that putting him and Ovi together would just be magic, but I mean Ilya's older than Ovi, so Ovi might have a little bit of deference to him just as as a superstar Russian veteran. I mean that to me is something where it's. You put them together in hopes that maybe Ilya gets together, but maybe you're thinking maybe Ovi's going to learn some tricks here. Maybe he's going to learn a little something extra from this. But I think it's beyond that. That's beyond that. Ovi's an infinitely better player than he has ever been. I mean, and I say that as a huge Kovalchuk fan. I loved him, man. He was just incredible to watch. But watching him the way he played in Jersey, you think back to that Cup final.
He was great.
I mean, he was doing everything. I mean, him playing shorthanded. I mean, he was such a dangerous player there, and he's not that guy anymore. I mean, it was cool to see him get a little bit of a resurgence in Montreal. But that was more about the lack of talent that the Habs had than it was about Kovalchuk just being that much better of a player. But
he's gonna end up back there this fall.
That's another thing I worry about. Like he's literally a rented stooge right now. Like he knows that. Everybody knows that.
Stooge is
stooge.
Wow.
I'm not.
We're not talking about.
You're making him sound like a mall cop.
I don't mean to be a jerk, but I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying? It's like, all right. So the other thing about this,
getting around on a segue. Nice.
The other thing about this game was both teams had 5 power plays, and both teams only scored once on the 5 power plays. There were a lot of power plays in this game, and both teams' power plays look horrendous. Now we know power plays are a hard thing to. Everybody keeps talking about how hard it is to get power plays back this quickly and all that stuff. But these teams are both teams that, well, especially Washington. Washington has to take advantage of power plays.
I would be more concerned from a Carolina point of view because I'm looking at the minutes played, and Vatanen, who hasn't played for longer than 4.5 months because of the injury, he was splitting time with Jake Gardiner, who, if everybody was healthy, wouldn't be in the lineup for Carolina. And those are piss poor replacements for Dougie Hamilton, who, if he would have stayed healthy, was probably a Norris Trophy candidate. I think that's a big concern for Carolina.
Can I bring up the elephant in the room? John Carlson crashed into the wall. Reardon can downplay that all he wants, but I'm a little worried.
Yeah, I thought so too, and his minutes kind of went down after that.
He was out. He never came back.
And now I'm going to sound like
and I'm concerned about Washington's overall defensive depth after their first 3 defensemen, after Carlson, Orlov, and Dillon's in the mix there too. But again, once you get past that, Gudas is okay. It's just I have my concerns about Washington's overall defensive depth and how it could be exploited potentially.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree. I totally agree with you on that one. Now, I have to admit, like, I was running around crazy and doing all this stuff, and I do not know why Samsonov did not play in this game. So can you guys fill me in on what's happening with
He's injured.
He's injured,
yeah. And is it Vanacek?
Vitek Vanacek was in there.
They were having a competition between Copley and Vanacek to be the backup for Holtby. Like, apparently it was based on how they played in scrimmages. Vanacek played better. I didn't think he played badly, but I mean, if they have to go to Vanacek over Holtby, they're as bad off as Chicago would be if Malcolm Subban had to play.
I give a little.
This brings up my question. Then my question. I thought he was hurt. I just wanted to make sure. I figured it out. But so my question is this: with him not available. Mm-hmm. Does this help Braden Holtby at all?
I think it helps him on the market when he's a free agent in October.
No, but mentally right now, like when he's playing the games, he knows that there's not that, because this was a competition going in. Basically, people were saying that Samsonov should be their goalie.
Joe, what do you think?
I hope he had the same kind of pressure when the Caps won the cup.
Yeah.
I think it was the same question of whether or not he was going to be able to do it. I think that's still a fair question to ask of him. Can he handle it? I mean, there's a lot about his game the last few years that I just don't like.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think that he's still going to cash in the offseason. But I think Samsonov, having him back him up is a much better thing than Vanacek or Phoenix Copley. But as for whether it clears his mind, I don't think so. I think it puts a different pressure on him to be able to hold it down instead.
Yeah. And the pressure of, if you have an impressive performance, it will probably convince other general managers who are looking for goaltenders, I can spend the money on this guy. I mean, he's won a cup, he's been a good goaltender for a number of years, but if he shines in these playoffs, that just makes them feel more confident to give him an extra year and give him an extra $1 million in a free agent deal.
Yep. Okay, moving on to St. Louis, Chicago. Definitely the surprise game of the day, the way it went down. I'll say this, like, the Blues are Stanley Cup champions. This game meant nothing to them in their heads, and you could see that it really looked like it meant nothing to them. The way they played, I thought they really, they didn't. They did throw a lot of hits. Like the St. Louis Blues were trying to get going the whole time by trying to level the Blackhawks at every opportunity. I mean, this was the first team that hit really in this entire postseason, whatever you want to call it. They threw 31 hits at the Hawks, but couldn't score and had a lot of their shots blocked. Like the Hawks were doing a great job with blocking shots to the point where the Blues only ended up with 21 shots on goal. This game was controlled by the Blackhawks style. Like the Blackhawks dictated this style of this game, and that was, to me, pretty amazing. Like this is a Stanley Cup champion versus a team that shouldn't even be here in the playoffs. And but I also think that you saw the motivation of the Blackhawks defense here, not wanting to, trying to protect Crawford with all these block shots. Like they were doing everything they could to help their goalie out, and that is a rallying cry that I did not expect from that defense, which is so much older, like we talked about. I mean, they were really good. So my question is, are the Blackhawks better than we thought they were?
No. No, I don't. I think that kind of effort is just them going to the mat for a guy who's a leader in the room. They don't, because that's the guy that they need. They don't have an option like that. He's got to be the guy that's got to carry the weight. And a veteran team playing that way, it's great. It's great to see. But that's like a mid-late 90s sort of throwback type of way to play. And you get against a more skilled team, and it's one exhibition. Nobody's been on the I get all that stuff. But if you get Chicago against anybody who's going to be able to kind of bring it a little bit faster, with a little bit more skill, and I know that's a little different in the West, but that's not going to last. If it gets them through the first round, hey, congratulations, did it. Yeah. Also screwed yourself out of a shot at the number one pick.
Right.
I'm going to say no. Sorry, jump through.
That's that to me. It's not the kind of thing that's going to last. You can roll it back 20 years ago, and that style will get you to maybe the conference finals. That's not going to do it now.
I knew it was a no when I saw Craig Berube in a tracksuit top and jeans. I knew at that point they were not going to give their best effort.
I know. One of the quotes I think from Ryan O'Reilly was the fact that the puck was bouncing around a little bit. We weren't we weren't clean. So they had way too many turnovers against Chicago, and St. Louis is going to will clean that up and adapt in that circumstance. I think Chicago took advantage. Where they could take advantage, but I am not convinced by any stretch of the imagination that I think that in Chicago's ability to make a deep run.
Go ahead, Jan.
So I was going to say is I probably give them a notch above where I think we rated them originally because of all the question marks about Crawford. So while those all haven't been alleviated, you're a little bit more confident in his ability to be able to play goal. But as Joe said, bringing it against a team that's going to bring it, well, guess what? They're going against the Oilers next, and Mr. McDavid and Mr. Draisaitl will be spinning tops around some of these guys. So it's going to be a much different game than playing against St. Louis in a contest that didn't matter at all.
Yeah, Connor McDavid's going to turn Adam Boquist into a turnstile. I mean, but this is the thing. Kubalik had 2 goals and an assist yesterday, and only played 12 minutes. I was a little surprised.
Phenomenal in this game.
I know. And I was
12 minutes, you're dead on right, and that kind of brings up my. Go ahead, Mike. I'm gonna piggyback after that because I have a thought.
But the other thing in terms of St. Louis, I wouldn't be concerned about this game. I wouldn't be concerned if they play bad in the 3 round robin games. Their playoffs start when the first round starts in a couple weeks, and the most important thing for them was getting Vladimir Tarasenko on the ice. He had 4 shots on goal. If you get him at Tarasenko's best level, which he was at times during the playoffs last year, this team is dangerous.
Yeah, there's no question. And now I think the interesting thing about Kubalik is the Hawks he's still new enough. I mean, we all know he's great and he, all that stuff, but he's new enough, as our guys, like Kirby Doc and DeBrincat. They're new enough that you still don't necessarily, when you're playing the Hawks, you're still thinking about Taves and Kane and not thinking about these guys. And to me, that's what it looked like St. Louis was doing. Like St. Louis was like, okay, we're going to – and these guys are – the interesting thing about the Hawks is they've been slowly building up this really interesting young DeBrincat, the young – Dylan Strome was really good yesterday.
Dylan Strome had a good game. Again, I think Chicago did look good, but I also think St. Louis couldn't have looked worse.
Right.
Yeah. And
very disinterested, haphazard style. That was very un-Blues-like in that case.
And the issue is going to be when they face Edmonton is not the quality and the depth of their forwards. It's the depth and quality of their defense. Yeah. And Duncan Keith is not 25 anymore. He's 35. And when you look at Boquist, Carlson, Slater, Cuckoo, a slowed down Oli Mata, this is not Robinson, Savard, and Lapointe. This is a flawed defense. And they're going to have a tough time against Edmonton trying to corral Draisaitl and McDavid.
Okay, St. Louis. Are we going to see a possible sophomore slump from Jordan Binnington in the playoffs?
No.
Everyone's confident on that one. No. All right then. Yeah. I thought he looked very average yesterday.
Yeah, but
from him looked particularly great, and I think that was kind of part and parcel. It was kind of
defense hung them out.
Like they were getting. They looked like a team that was kind of getting their emotions in, getting things out of their system on the ice, and it wasn't a case because they know they've got some games here to get things set.
Okay, Mike. Okay, now the next question, since everyone's pretty much set on that one, is it possible for a big defenseman? And I've heard this before, that big defensemen take the longest to get going in the NHL seasons. Like in general, it takes them, before they really get into their mode.
Well, if you ask Shea Weber, I would say yes.
Yeah, no, and I think I've seen this before, and I remember Tom Laidlaw talked about this a lot with me and said, those bigger guys, like they're not usually ready after they've been off for a while, like completely ready. In terms of that, just the and to me, that's what Pietrangelo looked like yesterday. Like I saw him. He had 4 giveaways. I mean, that's uncharacteristic of him.
He looked bad, but Parayko looked good, so I'm going to go against that theory.
Parayko's younger.
And so Pietrangelo has what?
Younger, he's still big, right? They're still big, but older and big is different than younger and big too, I think.
Now you're.
I would say it is, right? I mean,
it's the Eklund caveat, Russ. Don't
just put me out the pasture then.
I should have known.
He's got
throw me under the bus.
I don't think he's going to basically have that tough of a time. He's got 3 more games to find his sea legs and get back to his normal.
Which is fortunate, I think, for them, because they need him to be the guy. Still. Pietrangelo, and
they do, but they've got a lot. Their defensive depth is just superior to St. Louis. Even Pietrangelo has a slow start. They have enough personnel there that I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I mean they blocked a lot of shots too. But all their shot blocks, which is interesting. Usually you see like Jaden Schwartz had 1, but usually you see a lot of forwards with some, a few shot blocks, but. The
last thing that these teams want to do, all evidence to the contrary with Chicago, who blocked shots, is get hurt blocking a shot in a meaningless game. I think that's what St. Louis's approach was here. This is a warm up. We're going to have 3 round robin games where the only consequence is seeding in the playoffs. Our playoffs start when the first round starts.
I also, you know what, Mike? You know what you're making me think of? There's also a difference where Berube's got nothing to prove. Colleton still has a lot to prove.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is and I think the Hawks played this game very seriously. I mean, they know they're stepping in to Edmonton. They know that they had to play this game full out. They had to see what they had. They had to get. I mean, it couldn't have gone worse for Florida yesterday. The Panthers, it couldn't have gone better than it went for the Hawks. This is like the perfect game.
Chicago needed to be again. They're diving straight into it.
Yeah,
right.
Crawford getting a shutout. That's astonishing.
But we don't know. Again, I'm still going to be skeptical. I like Crawford. I've always liked him as a guy, but I don't know what his stamina is going to be like.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the next game, he's got to play like this again for 3 periods. I don't know if he could do that.
Good point. All right, we got to move a little quicker. Sorry, Islanders and the Rangers.
Good.
This was can the Islanders make teams play their style? That was my question, because that's what the Islanders did yesterday. The Islanders made the Rangers. The Islanders outcoached the Rangers.
Yeah, I think that's David Quinn's fault though, because he talked about playing a simpler style, which is not what they did during the season.
Yeah,
and they played right into Barry Trotz's hand. I also was shocked that Devin Taves is the Islanders' number one defenseman now, number one power play guy. But he's also in my book Sticks and Stones, so people should buy it, because who else has a book with Devin Taves? I do.
That's good. That's a really good point. All the information you ever want to know. Coming soon, a 10-part documentary on Devin Taves.
Barry Trotz.
30-minute penalty box for Russ there for self-promoting.
I'll take it. No, he's allowed. Barry paid enough not to do that.
Barry Trotz's main tactic is to bore everyone to death.
Yep.
To win the game. It didn't work in Nashville. It only worked in Washington when he had overpowering offense.
It worked in Nashville.
Nets off. So I don't know. I keep looking at this Islander team, and Varlamov has always been sort of inconsistent. I think he's a good goaltender, but when he's not on, I think he's very average. And I don't know if they have enough offense. They had enough offense against the Rangers, but I agree with Russ. The Rangers played into their hands. I don't know if Florida is going to play into their hands.
Yeah,
I don't know. That Trotz has been so good at just being able to lock things down. Yeah. I think the Islanders' lack of offense, not a huge problem as long as the Isles got the goaltending working for them.
Right.
I don't see it as too much of a problem. The only place where they get beat is if a team just decides to flex their speed on them, and that's the big issue. I think the Islanders are going to have, is that when they get against the tougher teams. That's gonna be a problem, because the speed is what beats that defensive lockdown stuff. You get in behind everybody, you can blow them away, you can pick them apart. But until you do that, that's why the Rangers playing that way is a bigger surprise, because they have the speed. They've got guys that can do that. Playing like that doesn't do them any good. They had more success playing recklessly than probably any team in the league.
I covered the Islanders for a little while this year when we didn't have an Islanders writer, so I was getting into them more early in the season. And one of their killer things, one of their Achilles heels is if they get scored on first. Like, you have to get out on the Islanders. If you can get out on the Islanders, that change. They have to change the way they play.
Yeah, you're forcing them to play offensive, which they're not good at.
If you're going down 2-0 going into the second, third period, you're screwed against the Islanders. I mean, that's the bottom line. And to my other question, for the Islanders, is Thomas Greiss going to possibly take the spot from Sergei Varlamov? I'm just kidding. I like Thomas Greiss.
No.
How good was Varlamov?
He got it in.
My question is, how good was Varlamov, and how good is Varlamov? And is Varlamov a playoff goalie?
He was really good.
He's a guy that could really surprise everyone.
He made a couple of great saves on Jesper Fast yesterday, 3 in a sequence, which was pretty impressive. And I thought overall he played well enough that I don't think Greiss is getting in the nets unless something really untoward happens.
All right, maybe the Rangers.
The next time Greiss is in the net, he's playing for the Swiss national team.
And let Jan go first with the Rangers, because his time has been. Yeah,
right. Okay, there you go. The Rangers. My first guy is Jesper Fast really this good, Jan? Because he looked amazing in that game.
Well, we referred to him as the Swedish version of the Swiss Army knife. I mean, he does a little bit of everything, right? He's a guy who's moved up and down the lineup repeatedly. He's probably better suited for the third line, and he had a great game yesterday. But I still think if the Rangers are struggling, you're going to see Capo Kakko, who looked really good yesterday.
Yeah, he did.
He moved up from the third line to the second line to skate along with Panarin and Strome.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I'll say this about Fostek. I did a book signing with him, and off the record, we were kind of chatting, right? And this is when he was fairly new with the Rangers. It was his first season. And I said, actually, it's his second season. I'm like, with Sweden in the World Juniors, you were on the power play. You were on the power play in Hartford. All of a sudden, you come up with the Rangers. Why not the power play? And he goes, I had no idea. He goes, I would love to do it. He has more talent than you think he does.
Yeah.
It's just Rangers don't let him use it because of the way they play him.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Okay, the the other thing on the Rangers is the goalie question. And why is it that Shesterkin starts the game and the Rangers play like incredibly well against him incredibly well in front of him defense? I mean, to the point where, he faced 6 shots in 30 minutes. I mean, it's just a crazy, ridiculous thing. And then Lundqvist faces 12 shots in the rest of the game. Well, the Rangers are trying to come from behind. Like, that doesn't make none of that makes any sense.
Have you not watched the Rangers since Henrik Lundqvist has gotten to this team? I mean, that's the pattern.
Of course.
So there's a couple things. So first,
Right.
we said the same thing about Cam Talbot. We say the same thing about Antti Ranta. This hasn't changed now that Shesterkin is the goalie. They play a totally different style. It's got to be something psychological. The other difference is Shesterkin is a much better puck handler than Lundqvist is, so he's able to get the team out of danger a little bit easier than Lundqvist does. But this has been a pattern since 2005. This is no different than that goes on every single time somebody else is between the pipes to the Rangers.
They play better in front of other people.
But
They play differently. They leave him out on an island more frequently than they do anybody else.
Is that
He's the Jake DeGrom of goaltenders.
I do want to
So you have to rub that in. Thanks, Anthony.
I do want to say this, Ek.
Yeah.
Lundqvist made a statement yesterday. Now, the goal you gave up, if you want to say, hey, it wasn't a great goal, fine. But also, the Rangers let Devin Taves do whatever he wanted with the puck before he shot it.
Yeah.
Lundqvist played great. He played with a purpose. He did that on purpose. He wanted to make Quinn's decision hard. He knows Quinn's going to go to Shesterkin, but you know what? Lundqvist also knows he could still play. And the problem, Anthony and I talked about this offline. If the Rangers lose game 1 with Shesterkin and have to go to Lundqvist, Quinn's going to wish he didn't go that way and wish he'd have started Lundqvist to see what he had, because he is the guy that's used to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Shesterkin's not used to the NHL playoffs. He's just new in the league. Doesn't matter how he finished the season.
So one thing I'll add in is that Lundqvist has actually played that way the entire training camp. He's supposedly been very, very good in training camp. And this is what I wrote. I wouldn't be shocked, based on historical performance against Carolina and based on his record in the playoffs, that if he does go with Lundqvist first. I don't know if he will, but it wouldn't be shocking for me at all if Lundqvist is between the pipes Saturday at noon.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit easier, I think, as well, that if you have Lundqvist in and you got to bring in Shesterkin in a relief role, sometimes when you got a young player and they have to think about the situation coming in, they sometimes they might overthink it. Whereas if you're up and you're up for the next game and you're in, you just kind of go on in. I think sometimes the younger players just kind of go on instinct.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
And I'll tell you the other one, Ek, it's probably not a question you came up with.
Go ahead.
But the question would be, would I play Brendan Smith in the playoffs? The answer would be no.
I disagree.
How serious
I wouldn't play him, man.
I disagree. I think he and Trouba looked really good together yesterday, so I disagree.
It's not going to last.
Yeah, Russ, I expect 900 words from each of you arguing your points on the Brendan.
They said Stahl left the game early. Was it an injury or did
he blocked the shot?
Precautionary reasons, supposedly he could have come back. We'll see, but that's what they said when he pulled
he blocked the shot in a bad place, Mike.
Oh,
well, there you go. All right, last game of the night. Columbus. The Canucks and the Jets. All right, I'm going to throw this question out as a combined question for both of them. Can either of these teams play if they have to play against a team that can play defense? Like that this game was a game between two teams that neither of which can play defense. And they just flat out did old time Western hockey, Western Canadian 1980s style hockey between these teams.
I think Winnipeg has a better chance because I think Hellebuyck is the better of the two goals. Not that Markstrom's not a good goaltender.
Yeah.
Hellebuyck is used to that for the entire season, playing in front of a porous defense, and I think he can steal a series with the offense that Winnipeg has.
That's good.
I'll say this, Ek. Maybe with the 49 other people that were let go by the Canucks, maybe they let a few players go too, and that's why they didn't play well, because that was really lousy yesterday. If they'd have let go 50, everybody would have gotten 8 weeks of severance, but they instead got rid of 49 so they wouldn't have to pay any. And I thought that was lousy, so I'm glad the Canucks lost.
Yeah, I thought the other thing, with the Canucks, Elias Patterson had like an off game for him, which was surprising to me. Do we expect him to be able to? We haven't seen him in the playoffs. Like, what's going to be the level of Elias Patterson? I think is a potential superstar.
I think the problem is for Vancouver is that you have to worry about your opposition is going to go. The Wild are going to key in on him immediately from opening jump. They're going to everything's going to be game planned to stop him. It's Vancouver's got to find ways of getting advantageous matchups here, and again, you just don't know. Again, this is the first time he's going to be in a postseason environment in a short series. I just have my concerns about Vancouver surviving here in the first round.
Yeah, I'm going to take a page from Joe. If Vancouver can't skate around Minnesota, they're in trouble because they can't win a physical battle.
No, neither team hit in this game at all. They were like, no, there was no.
Winnipeg's still a lot bigger. They take up more ice.
And I think that, I do think the Wild is not. When I watched the Canucks play in this game, I'm like, the Wild are not a good matchup for them. You can see that right away. This is a tough spot for them.
It's a lot like Toronto Columbus. Yeah, I have my concerns. Yeah, very similar concerns here.
Yeah, and I can see that. And they have to. I mean, now the Jets, on the other hand, and even though they won this game, I thought they actually won it more than they won it. Like it looks like a closer game than it was today. To me, the Jets showed signs that they are actually a lot better than maybe I thought they were. And are the Jets better than we thought? Are the Jets a legitimate threat?
I think the Jets are a lot better up front. They've got a tremendous forward group as far as I'm concerned. That's a group that I think can beat anybody. Problem is that defense is not great. I mean, that's been their shortcoming all season long, is that they don't defend very well, and they don't have the defensemen that can really help it out. But I think that forward crew, if you let them run wild on you, they're going to burn you, because I mean Wheeler's fantastic. He can score with anybody. That whole crew, Laine, God help you if you get Laine getting hot and start stuff on you. And it's just tremendous amount of talent there. Shifley, geez, I'm forgetting guys all over the place.
Yeah, it's great. They have three lines, like three legitimate
scoring lines that can really hurt you in a number of different ways.
Yeah, we always say, teams have like a first line, second line. What happened there? I'm sorry, first line, second line. I feel like they have a first line and they have two second lines on this team.
Mm-hmm. And when you have a defense that's 1/3 Buffalo Sabres rejects, I mean, Bolio and Kulikov. I mean, that's a statement. Now, the one thing that they did do, they got DeMello at the deadline from Ottawa, and DeMello has been pretty solid. He shored up that right side with Pionk, but it's not like you have Bufflin there, so you're really not as good as you used to be. But they might be good enough to get through the play.
They have Hellebuck. They do.
And the scary part is if you shut down Shifley and Connor and that line, then you still have to face Elias and Laine on the next line, and Cody Eakin actually just stepped into the absolute best situation you could possibly step into coming to that squad.
To me, one of the most interesting moments in this game was the Brock Besser breakaway on Connor Hellebuck. And
I didn't see it.
Yeah, he gets a clear cut, like center line in breakaway. Like no, all the time in the world to think about it. And Brock Besser's obviously an incredibly talented player. And he looked like, when he looked where Hellebuck was stationed and how Hellebuck was positioned, he looked like he was shooting at a brick wall. Like Besser had no idea what the hell to do. Like he got in, he just didn't know where to go. He should have 100 moves. And Hellebuck looked like he was taking a warm up breakaway.
There's a lot of Hellebuck, man. He's big. He's big and he has big pads. I mean,
it's just like they really trying to make a move in tight on Hellebuck, which is what Besser did, is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah,
but,
you have to hope for traffic. With Hellebuck, the way you got to beat him is you got to hope for traffic. You got to get guys in front, try to deflect, and try to get a carom. Otherwise, if he sees you dead on, especially in that small area of the ice, he's got the.
Oh yeah, and I think you have to watch Hellebuck in like the All-Star game and see that his issue is that he plays that like Steve Mason type game where he's back in his net. He's so big, he goes back. He can move very little, very percentage-driven type goaltending. The only thing about that is he's back in his net. So if you have sharp shooters, you do have corners on him. You got to really take advantage. And in the All-Star game, he was taken apart by people like that. But you're talking about the best shooters in the NHL. So
no defense.
And no defense being played in front of him. But again, of course, as we said, he's used to it now, but playing in front of that.
He is used to playing without defense, for sure. But I thought this was really impressive, considering that they did this, like you're saying, like you said, Joe, like without like Wheeler, Laine, and these guys being a real big factor in this game. Like Shifley, Wheeler, and Laine, they were a factor, but they didn't need them.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. Like you can shut one line down, but you're gonna have a couple others that you got to contend with to try to score.
Yeah. No, for sure.
It's tough. It's way different than other teams where if they've got they've got like maybe a line and a half. Like if you can shut down that one line, well, you can probably stop that other guy.
You're right. Some real interesting games today, guys. Obviously, we got the Predators and the Stars in like 2 hours from now. That I think is a huge game for Nashville to actually to show that they're okay, because we need to see that. I think the Stars will probably go through the paces in that game a little bit more. I expect the Predators to come out hitting and come out pretty hard. Obviously the Preds got to play right away too. Then we have Boston and Columbus. I know Leaf fans out there will be watching this to see what Columbus is all about for sure.
Well, God knows they'll be getting some great quotes from John Tortorella, who said when asked what he's telling his players, he told the media, "It's none of your damn business what I'm talking about with my players."
Yeah, if he loses a playoff game, it'll be a 30-second Zoom call. That's it.
What's interesting about this is the team that knocked Columbus out of the playoffs last year. So yes. There's a hatred here between after the big win, they didn't really show up for the Boston series as much as they could have.
The big question is Nashville going to score more than 2 goals?
That's the big question. You're right. And then finally, we'll get a chance to see Arizona.
You didn't give the answer. What's the answer?
I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. That's the big question. We do the answer after the games.
Okay.
That'll be in tomorrow's show. And who will be the goalie for the Predators, which will be another fascinating.
That's another question. You're right.
The real tall guy or the real short guy?
And I really want to see what Arizona is all about right now after everything that's gone down.
That's a good temperature test.
Honestly, I think for me, the Coyotes, and I said this, they're a dark horse for me.
Yeah,
they're a dark horse for me. I think there's going to be. I like them in this series against Nashville in the first place, matchup wise.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think if they get rolling, especially if Kemper is on his game, I think there's a chance they might be one of those surprise teams who maybe goes more than a couple rounds.
Yeah, I mean,
and they also benefit from not being home, so they don't have to deal with all the other media.
Yeah, they're used to a quiet. Yeah, they're used to a quiet rink.
And every time he scores, Michael posts a hot dog meme because he just can't help himself.
I was gonna say if the Coyotes get eliminated early, you're gonna see Phil Kessel walking around Salem Field in Buffalo because it's named after a hot dog company.
So I just want Phil Kessel someday to make the Hall of Fame so we can send Mike there and make him sit through the entire induction ceremony. Make him sit there.
For those of you keeping track, two Buffalo Slams, one Slam day from Mike. That's not too bad. 2 Buffalo Slams.
You forgot something. 2 shameless promotions from Russ.
Killing me.
It's all good. Yeah, and then Vegas, of course, has a goaltending battle going on right now.
They don't.
No, they don't.
They're saying. I'm saying according to what they're saying, and let's say that sarcastically.
Well, whoever's saying that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about because they don't.
No, they've said it. They've come out and said Vegas is saying that they're not naming their goalie until they see what happens here. So
no. They named it. They named it yesterday late. They named
did they change their mind? All right.
They said before he is the goalie, yes.
A couple days ago, they were like, we don't know.
I know. Yesterday, they finally decided to do it.
Well, there's absolutely nothing to watch for night for Vegas in that game. It's all about Arizona and if Arizona can do anything. So if you're up late, Arizona, I see what you're saying, Anthony, but I'm thinking that they're either like bust or awesome. I don't think there's any middle ground. I think Arizona beats Nashville and then wins a series, or they just get trounced by Nashville. I'm not sure which way this plays out, but I can see Arizona going either way. But I think that they're going to have to get hot to do that.
And I think for Vegas, the question is, when is Max Pacioretty showing up?
Yeah, right. And
he stayed behind right now, so that's a big question.
Will Pasternak go nuts on Columbus today? He might. I mean, he's playing in that game, and there's a lot of stuff that's been written about him. That's the kind of thing I could see past the way.
Yeah, I could see him be fueled for this.
I could see him come out of that game and just like a on fire type thing and make a statement right away. So that's something to watch. All right, guys. Thank you, Joe, so much. As always, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And tomorrow, I guess we'll have Kevin. Perhaps we're looking at Kevin tomorrow. Yes. And I think tomorrow, guys, we need to do I think we need to revisit our predictions. Based on what I thought we could do, and I'll talk about this later, is that maybe we can write our predictions down and I'll have them all so we can not go person by person, but have it, we'll do a quick thing for everything. All right, folks, remember that the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you